right, welcome back to week 10 of our TrueNTH Lifestyle Management yoga program. We're going to begin lying on our backs. If you'd like, you can have some head support with you. If you have any spinal issues or blood pressure issues, you may want to just elevate your head on something small. It can be a towel or a thin block. Nothing too big. And we're going to lie just right on our backs. And take our legs. So we're going to go from our feet on the floor to putting our feet soles together and allowing the legs to fall out into what we call bound angle pose or butterfly. Now for some of us that can be quite a big hip opening. So you have a few options. If you can grab things, either yoga props or things that you may have around the house, pillows, cushions, towels folded up. And if the legs are up high, even these foam yoga blocks will work. If when you go down the knees are up quite high, it'll let the hip flexors stay engaged. So just pull something right in close so that those hip flexors get to relax and be supported. And then it'll be a bit more of a passive opening with relaxation. And if you don't need the props, that's perfectly great too, if you're okay to just relax into this opening. We just don't want the hip flexors grabbing on and staying engaged the whole time. And then hands wherever you like them. Some people like them on the belly or the ribs. Some people like them out in a low V. And we're just going to start to soften and settle into our breath. So you can allow the eyes to close here or go to a soft downward gaze. But we're trying to let go of any of that outer visual stimulation that we have. And that really helps us connect well to our body. And then just start to feel the breath moving in the body. Inhaling through the nostrils and exhaling through the nostrils. And you can follow the path of that breath. So we often start yoga lying down with our eyes closed because it gives us an opportunity to not only check in with how the physical body feels, but also to check in with the breath. So if I notice that at the top of my inhale, my eyes are moving around or fluttering around under the eyelids, or I notice that my shoulders lift at the top of my inhale, I know that I'm working a little bit too hard. And I want to just back off and let my breath be a little bit. So So there's no need to be forcing these big, deep breaths. In fact, that's a bit of a myth in yoga. We just really want to feel some movement, particularly around the rib cage. And you'll probably remember that I've mentioned that the diaphragm sits tucked right up underneath in the rib cage. And so if we can feel the ribs expand on inhale and contract back on exhale, then we know the diaphragm is moving nice and freely. And of course, because this class in particular has a focus on the health and well-being of our pelvic floor, we might be able to focus on working the pelvic floor on purpose as well. So just noticing that as I inhale and my ribs expand out a bit, my abdominal organs will move down and I'll feel that downward action at the pelvic floor. And then as I exhale and the ribs contract back into the body, the diaphragm moves back up. Those abdominal muscles will move back up and allow for the muscles of the pelvic floor to also move back up. And it's very subtle. So we've had 9 weeks so far of really some good awareness on the pelvic floor. And so sometimes we can connect to that and feel those muscles moving with the breath. And other times it's a bit more challenging and we may need to connect with a pelvic health physio. So not just a physio, but a physio who specializes in pelvic health. And they can really help you with that connection. So now my exhalation is getting a little bit longer than my inhalation as my breath slows down and my body is nice and calm. My exhale often just naturally gets a bit longer. And I'm going to try and take this nice easy breath, perhaps a little longer on the exhalation, into my practice with me. So now my legs have been open like this for a long time, so I might need to almost help lift them. I can do that a couple times. And the blood will flow back into my hips. And then I'm slowly gonna just rock my legs side to side. Because it's a big opening, especially if you didn't have props on either side. You'll probably feel that opening all through the hips, the upper legs, and the low back. So just a little bit of movement before we move on. And then we're going to take a strap. So if you have a strap or you're at home and you don't have a yoga strap, that's perfectly okay. You can take a belt or a tie. A resistance band will work great. We're going to have that close by. In fact, I can loop it right now around my right foot. And then I'm going to lie back down. So this pose is fairly long, but really good for the health of our pelvis and working on pelvic stability. And also, for most people with low back pain, we will, and especially if it's non-specific low back pain, like that's what we call back pain if you don't necessarily know what is causing it. And so this pose can be really helpful for that too. So we're going to go down with bent knees. And then I'm going to straighten out my legs. I've got one side of the strap in each hand right now. I'm going to just notice that I feel pretty straight. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I feel pretty straight. And then I'm going to inhale my right leg up. So we have done this pose before. It was, I think, in week 2. Anyways, it was earlier on. So you may have heard me say, if you have back pain right now and this feels like a lot, you can always keep this opposite leg bent as you bring that leg up, and that might feel a little better on the low back. So either version is fine. And then also sometimes it feels a little better to keep a little bend in that leg. And the hamstrings usually engage a little bit better anyway than when it's locked straight. So just a little bend. And we're just pausing here just to allow for a little bit of release and relax in that back of the leg. Now you might be finding that your leg is much lower, your foot is still facing the end of your mat, and that's perfectly okay. That's the purpose of this nice long strap, is that I can find the right place for my own body. Now I do a lot of yoga and have been for a long time, so my leg easily comes up, but it doesn't mean anything. I've always just been fairly mobile, so don't worry about where my leg is. Just find the place where yours is getting a little bit of a release back here. And I'm working my foot too, so I'm not allowing my outer foot to be way higher than my inner foot. I'm drawing the foot back and flexing at the ankle so that I also get a bit of a stretch in the calf. And my foot is pretty level as though I'm standing on it. I want to keep my shoulders relaxed back on the floor. So I'm only reaching up higher if I'm able. And now we're going to move on. Now that we've given those hamstrings a little bit of time to say, yeah, this feels safe, I'm going to take both sides of the strap into my right hand. And then I'm going to turn my leg a little bit. So if my toes are pointing towards 12 o'clock now, I'm going to turn them so they point to 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And then with that turn, I'm going to allow my leg to start to move out to the side. But I don't want to let it go so far that my other hip lifts. I want to keep that other hip grounded. That's the pelvic stability that we're talking about. And only bring that leg out as far as I can, keeping half my weight in my left hip and butt cheek. Okay, now this is more work. So I want to watch that my jaw and my neck stay relaxed and that my breath stays nice and fluid. Inhaling and exhaling through the nose. I'll take a couple more breaths here. My leg might start to shake a little bit. And then on my next exhale, that's when I'm going to pull from my belly. Use my core, my inner thigh, to pull back up to center. And then I might hang on to the strap and slowly lower to like a count of 6 or 8 or maybe even 10. And if I've been doing core work for a while, I might be able to even take that strap off as I slowly lower. If this gets feeling really challenging, remember you can always bend that leg, the other leg, to help a little bit with support on the way down. Good, and then just take a pause for a moment. Lie with both legs out straight and just feel how that one hip feels. Sometimes we notice, oh, it just feels a little looser. It might feel a little flatter to the floor. All right, we're going to take the strap around the left foot now. I'm going to turn just because I have a wall close. So if you lose the top of my head, don't worry about that. I'm going to lasso that left leg, and then again I can decide if I want to have a bend in my right leg or if I'm comfortable keeping them both straight. I'm going to inhale and bring that leg up and decide where I want my hands to be on the strap. Decide how high you're comfortable having that leg and have a little micro bend in that left knee. So the hands grip, but you try not to do all the holding with your hands. You're trying to get the leg to do some of the work as well. All right, so we're just going to pause here and breathe. We're going to flex at the ankle of that left foot. Keep the foot level as best we can. And let those hamstrings come to relax and know that you can tell the nervous system that this is a safe place. And then we didn't talk too much about it on the other side, but now that we know what we're doing, maybe you can focus a little more on this leg that's on the floor. Just keeping it active if it's straight. Maybe even drawing those toes back like the ankles flexed again. And then we're going to keep this hip down. Take the strap into the left hand. Rotate out to 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And then slowly let that leg abduct or move away from the midline. And keeping this one relatively down. Again, you'll feel that weight shift roll over to the left side of the pelvis. And we want to come back to a place where we can keep it down. And so it might be different than the other side. And you're breathing, your breath is steady. So it's almost like the lower body moves to the left, but the upper body, particularly the waist and the top of the hip, are working to the right. That's that yin and yang of yoga, often working in opposite directions. And then you're going to prepare for your next exhale. That's when you're going to power that leg back up and then slowly lower, lightening the grip with the hands so that we use core and leg muscles, or maybe taking the strap off altogether. Totally up to you. Just being mindful of what the rest of the body is doing. So my jaw is relaxed, my neck is relaxed, my breath is smooth. Great. And then once that left leg has made it to the floor, just pause there and see how that feels in your body. Sometimes people feel a little flatter to the floor. Sometimes they actually feel like their legs have gotten a little longer. You really do feel like you've created a bit of space in the hip joints. And you may not feel it right away, but maybe after you try it a few times, if it's a pose that you like. You can bend your knees, place your feet on the floor, and then either roll up to sitting or roll to your side and bring yourself up. I said to sitting, but we're actually going to come right on to hands and knees. So again, you can pad the knees. I tend to give some of these recommendations each week, so you may have heard these before. For those of you that may not be able to kneel on your knees at all, just a reminder that you can take a rolled pillow or a cushion, and a lot of people place it under the knees, and that's okay for some people, and for others they're like, no, still doesn't feel great on my knees. So remember, you can come all the way to the tops of your shins in this position, and that'll really let the knees just float, and there'll be no pressure on them. Okay, and otherwise, if you're okay, you are kneeling right on your mat. And we're going to move through cat and cow. So as we inhale, we lift the tailbone and arch the back. Open the heart forward and maybe look just ahead. We don't need to look way up. We're just looking a little bit ahead. And then as we exhale, we start to round the back. Push up out of the shoulders. Let the head look between the thighs. And then you're going to move back and forth between the two. So when you're inhaling, you're opening the heart. And on your exhale, you're rounding, drawing the belly up, pulling the tailbone under. And so the movement lasts as long as my breath. So if my exhale is quite long, then I'm going to be rounding a little bit longer. So now let's add in the pelvic floor. As I inhale and lift my tailbone, my pelvic floor softens and relaxes. And as I exhale and round, my pelvic floor gently lifts and engages. One or two more times, back and forth between those two movements. Just getting the spine nice and warmed up before we come to standing. All right, so we're going to come to standing, and we're going to stand on a yoga block. A couple of catalogs, if you still happen to have an old phone book around, that would work as well. Just something that's fairly firm that we can stand on. If we know that our balance needs a bit of support, we can come to stand beside a wall, and we'll just very lightly use our fingertips. You can also bring in a chair, as we have in the other weeks, and just let your fingertips rest on the chair. Okay, so I'm going to use the chair on my left side, which means I'm going to stand with my left foot on the block. Okay, and so sometimes our hips like to fall out. We're going to pull, my head might go out of frame here a little bit, and that's okay. I'll move as far back as I can. So We're going to work to keep that outer hip in. So the outer hip pulls into the midline, and then the work comes through this floating hip. So again, I have a little soft bend in my left leg, which is my standing leg on the block. And then my work comes in this right hip. I'm gonna let it lower, and then I'm gonna lift it up. And I'm gonna lower it and hike it up. So these are called hip hikers, because I'm hiking that one hip. And I don't let it touch the ground in between my lifts. I'm trying to keep the work and the weight into this leg that's stabilizing me. So this leg is floating, the right leg is floating. Hands can be wherever you like. One might be holding a wall or a chair. The other hand can be on the hip. And eventually you're going to start to feel a lot of work in that standing leg. Okay, so you can decide when that's enough for you, and it'll probably want to just feel that little stretch when you're done. And then you can move to the other side. Usually I would switch my chair around, just so I'm not moving up and down on that side. But your wall or whatever you're using might be on the other side. If you're using something, you might be really challenging your balance. And now it is the left hip that is lifting and lowering. Little bend in my right leg. I'm hiking it up and lowering it down. Back and forth. And you can keep going for a few more if you like. You're getting most of that work into this outer hip, which is one of the muscles that really helps us with our balance. But our muscles don't work in isolation, so there are other muscles working. You'll probably feel the top of your hamstrings helping, maybe even some inner thigh. But it's mostly in here where you'll feel it. Some people even feel it into the calf of that standing leg. Perfectly okay as well. Okay, and again, if you need to, just take a little stretch. All right, so we have a few ways to do this next one. We're going to work on something that I call stork turns, and it is a balance pose. But I just want to give you the option to have your toes touching down in the back if you need to. So it doesn't mean that you have to actually lean back and put weight. You can stay with the weight, just what we call butterfly pressure, and keep most of the weight in the front leg. Or you can let that leg fully float if you're feeling confident with your balance. So find the way that's best for you. We're going to cross our shoulders. We could come into prayer position, or we could bring the hands down in front if that feels better for you. But I find that when we cross at the shoulders, it really helps us pay attention to our rotation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my upper body and I'm going to turn to the right. And then I'm going to come back to center. And then I'm going to turn to the left. And then come back. So you'll notice that I said come back to center, because I don't want you to swing all the way from one side to the other. I want you to stop in the middle and start your movement from there. Okay, so I'm also keeping my nose and my gaze forward. Come back to center. And then to the other side. Now you can absolutely take your gaze with you. That's just a different exercise. And that would be another level or two harder as far as working balance. So we start with keeping the gaze forward, and that helps us with our balance. So my upper body turns, my lower body doesn't. And I just come back to center and have a little pause to reset. If you happen to be someone who does rotational sports like golf or tennis, this is a really exceptional one for that. Just notice that your breath is nice and smooth. And then we'll switch sides. If you find it really challenging and a struggle, which I may on this side also, if you've had injuries on one side, it can be more of a struggle. Then I would just move with your breath. So I would exhale as I turn. And then I would inhale as I come back. And exhale, turn to the other side. Back and forth. We're getting that turn. Basically, you're turning from the waist up, and we have just a little hip hinge. In our body as we do it. And that just helps engage some of those muscles. All right. Let me just see where we're going here. Ah, yes, standing pigeon. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple options. Pardon me. We can do this one sitting in a chair if we need to. Or we can do it standing. I'll give you a quick glimpse at what it looks like. Basically, I cross my foot to my thigh and I'm hinged. Oops. Okay, or hands can be at the chest or they can be on the hips, whatever you prefer. And if you feel like you're gonna need a little more support, then a chair is a really great option. And also, if the foot doesn't come all the way above the knee, the chair helps us keep it. You can have it on the lower side of the knee as well. So you find the place that it works for your knee and your pelvis. And then again, arms can come up if you are feeling energetic. And then they're actively reaching out as you then hinge over. Or you can keep them closer in. So this is a bigger lever. That means there's more load. And when you keep them in close, there's a little less load. So that might be the right choice for you. If you want to work the arms but keep the load smaller, take your fingertips to your hip crease and press the fingertips in, and you'll feel that activate all through the arms. Okay. You can come out on that first side, and I will do the second side off the chair. The wall is another good. So we have this bone that we've talked about before, the sacrum. It's right above your tailbone. It's a triangular shaped bone, and it works really well at the wall to help with balance. So my whole back isn't on the wall because I still want my core to work. So I use my sacrum at the wall. And then I've still got that bend in my standing leg. And you can actually bend as much as you like, however much you want to come into chair. And have a little hinge forward. Some of you may feel a little more comfortable staying a little higher up in that bend. You don't have to come all the way down. But see how it feels for you. Everyone will be different. And then when I'm ready, I can straighten up, let that leg lower, and just very gently loosen up my hips a little bit. Might even feel good to just bend over into that sort of skier position. Stretch out those muscles that we just used. We're going to use them again. So, I'm going to just move these things out of the way. Now there's a couple ways to do this. I could have my hands on the wall. Or I can actually have my body on the wall. I have a picture here, so it's a little harder. But basically, I'm going to come out to this position, and then I'm going to start to open up and then close. So I'm moving from my hips, opening my pelvis, and closing it. Okay, if you don't have a wall nearby, you can do the same thing using your chair. So I come out, holding the chair, and then opening and closing. Back and forth. Do a couple more on that side. And then it'll be the same thing on the other side. So I take the chair out to as far as is comfortable for me. And I want to try to keep my hips over my leg versus coming forward with the hips. So I push back through my hips, and then I'm rotating. And if it's really hard for me to look that way, I can keep looking down and just rotate open and closed from that position. Back and forth. My leg keeps dropping. I want to try my best to hold it up. It's a lot of work, as you are probably also feeling. Oops. Trying to fit all this stuff into a small space here. All right. So we're going to take a little break in downward dog. It may not feel like a break for the arms and shoulders, but it's going to give our lower body a bit of a chance to rest. So I'm going to come forward into my forward hero position, and that just helps me know for downward dog where my hands and feet should be. So I'm sitting back on my heels, arms stretched out in front, and then I can come up to tabletop. Now we've done downward dog already, but I'll just remind you. I'm going to tuck my toes under, and then I'm going to lift up just a bit, like those hovers that we've done. Bring my belly all the way back to my thighs. And then I only start to straighten them if I can stay way back here in this position. If I start to straighten them and my belly pops off my thighs, I've straightened too much. I want to rebend them and keep my torso back behind my shoulders. Nice and easy. If you open up a little more, you might be able to bicycle, one leg open and then the other. And then slowly, I'm going to bring my knees down. And I have a couple options. I can just come back to this forward hero, but I find my arms need a break. So I bring my knees in close together, and then I bring my arms back beside my legs, and I get my shoulders completely get to let go. If your head doesn't get all the way to the mat, you can always feel free to bring some towels or a block or cushion in to support the forehead. So it's not going to push the neck up. If it is, it's too high, bring it a bit lower so that the back of the neck stays relaxed. And you're just going to pause there and come back to your breath for a moment or two from all that challenging standing work that you did a great job on. Sometimes it's not about how well we may have been able to do it, it's just about the fact that we gave it an effort and it looked like our own version of that pose. So I'm going to have a few blocks handy here. The other thing I do want to mention is, before we move on, if you find that downward dog is just too much for you, you don't like taking the head below the heart and it's too much on your wrists or your shoulders, you may remember this from the other class, but there are other options as well. You can come back and do your cat and cow, your arching and your rounding in place of down dog. You could also do it on forearms and come in that way. Or you could even just do a plank if you like. It's completely up to you how you feel about that. We're going to come into a lunge. And we're going to have some good props near us. So maybe a pillow or two and some towels or foam blocks. And maybe I'll show you this one forward. So I'm going to have my props to the inside of my leg. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into a lunge with my right leg forward. And I can just take a moment here to get set up in my lunge. Just want to make sure you can see it well. And basically, once I get my lunge set up, I've still got my back knee down right now, supporting me. It can stay down if you prefer, especially if you're tired from some of the poses we've been doing. But I'm going to find a height to build up for myself where I can take my forearms down onto them while I'm in my lunge. Okay, I'm just going to change my positioning so you can see different angles. So I may have to build it higher. I might even have to bring a chair in to put my forearms on. And that's perfectly okay. We just start where we are and do what we can. Whatever position I'm able to come to, I don't want to get way down here low if it makes me round my back and push my hips back. I want to stay with my hips coming forward and my spine nice and long. So again, if that means I build up higher, perfectly fine. And then once I'm here, I can decide, do I want to keep that back leg down, or do I feel like I have enough energy to lift it up and work into a full lunge for a few breaths, pushing back through that back heel. And if it's hard on the toes, you might say, no, I need my knee down for a bit. Okay, and then we will switch to the other side. So I'll come right up. I'll bring that leg back. Bring the other leg forward. I'll move my props just slightly. So a lot of times the toes are really tight and it's hard to come into that full lunge. But once you get used to doing it and the feet start to release, what happens is when I tuck my toes under and I lift my knee and straighten, push back through my heel, I actually end up on more the ball of my foot than my toes. Now, I'm saying that as someone who has pretty open, mobile feet, so it certainly doesn't happen overnight, but they can release and start to open up. I'm going to come down onto my forearms again, and I'm hugging my inner left knee to my left shoulder. So I'm not letting that knee fall out. I'm actively pulling it into my midline. And then again, if I want to pop up into a full lunge, I'm certainly able to do that. Both are fine. Knee down is fine. I'm still getting the work, especially on that front leg. And after my exhale, I will start to come up and push the hips back. And just sit back on my bum to heels for a moment, take a pause. Sometimes you get a little bit lightheaded when you have the head forward like that. We're going to come into Happy Baby. So we're going to do a few variations. Now, we have done this in previous classes, so you probably know where I'm going, and you may know if you want support under your head, so you can go ahead and take that. I'm going to have my strap handy, just in case. And I'm going to turn so that my head is towards the camera, my feet are towards the wall, and ease myself down with bent legs. I can exhale to bring my legs up just because I'm compressing the belly. You absolutely don't have to, but for some people it's a little more support for the back. And then in Happy Baby, we're trying our best to get our knees to sort of open up and relax towards the armpits. But the strap comes in very handily for those where the people whose knees stay more upright. Then we can wrap the strap around our feet and let it do it. So for a lot of people who are really tight in the back body, low back and hips especially, their legs will be down here and it's much harder to hold them up down there. So they might be shaking a little bit. The strap is really helpful with that. You kind of pull towards yourself. And then those of you that can come into the position a little bit more Your feet soles will face up. Now my feet turn out just a little bit. That's just the way my thigh bones are positioned in my hip socket. I could work and keep them straight, but I'm starting to relax more now. I'm at the end of my practice, so I'm not worried about it. I'm just letting them go out. And another great way to do this pose, a couple options. If you have no strap, the easiest way is really just to place your hands behind your knees. And that helps with a little bit of gravity, drawing the knees down. And I have had a couple fellows who actually were really, really tight in the back line of their body. And so it was so hard for them to hold the legs up. We just bring them closer to the wall. And then that is their support in that way. Okay, so there's lots of options. And then if you like, you could also come into this pose one leg at a time if that helps it feel a little bit better. Work on one side, and sometimes I do a little bit of rocking while I'm here. Just get that thigh bone moving a little bit in the hip socket. And then same thing on the other side. Last but not least, for those of you that might feel a little more goal-oriented, you might like to take the hands to the outsides of the feet. Definitely not necessary for happy baby, and really usually too challenging for people unless they do a lot of yoga. But it's there if you're able. You certainly don't have to use the strap. Once you're able to be here, your arm goes to the inside of the leg, and your arm presses into the leg, and the legs press back into the arms. And so it becomes active. And you can also rock side to side. Sometimes feels nice on the low back. Take another breath or two in that posture, just relaxing, and then you'll slowly lower the legs down. You can even lower them down one at a time if that feels better for you. We're going to take them back up again in a moment, but you can take a brief pause with them down just to give the hips a little release. Okay, then I'm going to bend my knees in. And just for convenience, I'm going to place my strap around my feet now. Just so it's a little easier once I lie down. I'm going to slowly lower down. Exhale my legs in again. And then I'm going to work towards straight or almost straight. Oh, I lost my strap. There we go. So I don't need to push them all the way straight. I can keep that little bend that we talked about before. And I'm just working really into a nice hip hinge here, which is what a forward bend is. So this takes out the, if we were doing this standing, it might be easier to round the spine, but this takes out that opportunity. So again, you may find that you can't bring the legs all the way up. Some people will be able to, some may not. So just find your position, even if it's here. You know, the strap can help support you. You may need to bend your knees a little bit more for this to be accessible. Believe it or not, it actually starts to feel easier as you're able to bring the legs higher up. Because here, you're holding more load. There's that long lever again, right? But find the position that you can hold. You're gripping with your hands, but try not to have the hands do the whole work of holding the legs up. And again, if you are able to come up a little higher, you might just be rocking into a deeper hinge as the body allows and the nervous system allows. And then this one I'll release one foot and bring one foot down and then the other. And then I'm going to keep my strap handy just in case. And I'm also going to bring a bolster nearby just in case. We're going to go into a reclined figure 4. So we're doing a repeat of the pose we did standing, where our foot came to just above our knee. I also showed it in the chair. So we're going to do that. So first I'm going to lie down. I've got my bolster on my right side, my strap handy on my right side. And I'm going to take my left foot to my right thigh. And my knee might be pointing more on an angle, or it may be able to just relax back a bit. Doesn't really matter. There's no need to push it. We're just relaxing here. And then I'm going to slowly let my lower body revolve and let my foot come to my prop. So if you have a limited ability to separate the upper body while it stays straight and the lower body as it rotates, you might need 2 of these cushions, or a bigger couch cushion or something. You might need to turn it to a higher side. And conversely, you may also find that, you know what, I can actually let my foot come all the way over and let it stamp the floor as though you're standing. It's on it, the full sole. But don't work to get to the floor only to find that it's so taxing that you can't actually relax. Find some sort of height that just allows the body to release and relax. And then maybe even the eyes close. Now we're letting the nervous system know we're starting to finish, to calm the body back down again from some of our harder work. To tell our muscles that it is time for rest now. We know the rest is just as important as the work. And then slowly, probably on an exhale, just to support myself a little more, I'm going to exhale and pull back to center. And then I can uncross the legs there. And then I can do the same thing on the other side. I can have my bolster there. Once I'm ready, I'm going to let just the lower body turn. Now we are coming into some rotation there. You guys can stay in your twist. So just being mindful, and of course if you've had any hip surgery, or you have been given any instructions to stay away from any certain movements, you'll just want to be mindful of that before you go into too deep of a twist. Ensuring that it's the right movement for you. And getting nice and relaxed. And then slowly, on my exhale, I'm going to draw back to center, place that left foot on the floor, and then uncross. And then I'm going to pick up one leg and then the other. And I'm just going to rock a bit. And then I can do some knee hugs, exhaling to hug in, inhaling to release out, back and forth. Gonna let my feet find the floor. Now I have that bolster nice and handy. So if I find my hips and my back worked a lot today, and they did, because we did a lot of hip work, you can bring that bolster right in under the upper thighs. So some people like it under the knees, and some people prefer it up higher under the tops of the thighs. So for me, I like it up higher to get the release into my back. You can decide what's best for you, or if you want no bolster, then you're just coming into Shavasana on the floor. So get as comfortable as you would like to be. Take support under the head if you like it. Place a blanket over you if you'd like to. Stay nice and warm. And then when you feel comfortable and ready, you can go ahead and close the eyes. Allow the visual stimulation to just release away. You did the work, and now this is an important pose for our nervous system. And the rest is important for our body as well. So for many people, this lying in stillness is really challenging. I think that's why they say this is the most important pose in yoga. So if you're one of those people who, as soon as it's time for that quiet stillness, you notice that that's a challenge for you, I would get really curious about that. Just see if you can start to determine why that might be. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just good to get curious about these things. That ability to be in stillness on our own, what we would call solitude, is really important. With each exhale, see if the body can relax just a little bit further. The breath now is just falling into its own comfortable rhythm. And let your awareness drift down to the soles of the feet. See if you can feel, or maybe imagine, the soles of the feet releasing. Tops of the feet releasing. Toes gently curling. Feel the whole right leg and the whole left leg completely relax. All those leg muscles have let go now. And then both sides of the pelvis soften and relax. So the whole lower body is now completely relaxed. Almost this relaxed sense of heaviness through the lower body. Allow for the full length of your back to release and settle into your mat. Low back, mid back, and upper back. Shoulders rolling back heavily, completely settled. And then the whole right arm releasing. And the whole left arm releasing. Both hands relaxing. Fingertips gently curling. The front of the torso nice and released, feeling open and light. Feel a long line across the collarbones. And a sense of softness moving up through the neck, settling into the lower hinge of the jaw. And the tongue pooling heavily on the floor of the mouth. And the lips are soft. Cheeks are soft. The little inhales and exhales through the nostrils are very, very soft. The eyelashes barely brushing against each other are so soft. And then the space between the eyebrows completely released and ever so soft. So the whole body is relaxed, and the whole body is relaxed. The whole body can rest.
Just lying in stillness for the next minute or two. And if you notice the mind becoming busy, just let your thoughts drift on by like a cloud. Or come back to following that gentle inhale and exhale on its path in and out of the nostrils. And very gently begin allowing your breath to become fuller. Just a slightly bigger inhale, slightly longer exhale. And perhaps you're able to start feeling the rib cage moving again. See if you can keep the eyes closed as long as possible. Begin to wiggle fingers and then toes. Turn wrists and ankles. And then do what feels nourishing for you. So either stretching out or curling up and hugging in, maybe a bit of both. Just until the whole body has moved a little bit. And as you're ready, slowly make your way up to a seated position. Any comfortable seated position. And we'll meet with our hands together at our heart, thumbs into the breastbone in what we call prayer position, but it's really just, it's a hand mudra. Palms together, and they can even press a little bit. Thumbs press into the breastbone, breastbone lifts back into the thumbs so that you are sitting up nice and tall. Take a full inhale through the nose, exhale it out the mouth. We'll do that one more time, releasing it like a sigh again. the upper eyelids peel open. Soft downward gaze. And we'll say namaste. Thank you for joining me for week 10. And I'll see you back for week 11. Thanks. Have a great week.